All right, folks, I want to welcome our guest. It's David from England. Welcome to the show, David.
Hiya, how's it going?
Absolutely fabulous, man. I really appreciate you staying up late and doing this interview. I've been excited to talk to you. So let's get right into it. Everybody's familiar with the Tic Tac video that came out a couple of years ago and the controversy surrounding that. So you had an experience with something very similar to that way before this happened. So why don't you just take us back to where you were, what you were doing, and what happened to you?
Sure. So this was 6 years ago. I was in my garden and I was mowing the lawn and I had this overwhelming feeling to look up. So I looked up and I could see a white craft about 150, 200 feet high off the ground and only about 100 foot away from where I was. And I'm there looking up at this craft thinking, wow, this is amazing. Um, am I seeing this? I'm pinching myself. It's broad daylight. It's about 1 o'clock-ish in the afternoon. There's no clouds, blue sky, and a white craft. I'm looking at this craft and I can see the front of the craft is completely open. So there's no front on the craft. And as I look at the craft, there's a person in the craft. And if you could imagine, it's like the Tic Tac and it's pointing upwards. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's vertical. In the middle of the craft, there's a red seat. And if you imagine you were sat on that red seat and your feet were on some kind of floor, then the person in the craft was sat where the feet would be. So they were sat where the feet would be, and their legs were literally dangling down the front of the craft. And I'm there looking at, they're wearing a suit, he's got a helmet on. I'm looking just in total disbelief. So I'm looking at this object, and I noticed that either side of the Tic Tac, if you imagine it's vertical like that, either side of the Tic Tac, there are two long, white, thin rectangles, a bit like scaffolding poles, but much bigger and longer. And they're vibrating, they're shifting like this. So you've got the Tic Tac stationary, the guy sat there, and these things going really fast. And it's just, and at some point I must have said, wow, this is amazing. And as I said, wow, this is amazing, I tuned in to the guy who was sat there, and his head went from looking to the right as I view him, and he turned his head directly at me at that moment. So
So what did this thing look like? This person, this entity that was flying this craft. What did that describe that for us and sort of give us some detail about what that looked like?
so yeah, he was humanoid, definitely looked like a human to me. He had a sort of a white with a shimmering silver suit. Everything was the same. So the helmet was the same color, the suit was the same color, the shoes or whatever they were all the same color. He had a dark visor in this kind of whitey, silvery outfit. Yeah, I mean, the craft is white, and there's no kind of insignias or graphics or any kind of anything on there that would make you think it was designed, or it's just literally a Tic Tac on its end. There's like nothing on there at all. Everything's very plain. The seat was red. His seat was silvery white. Yeah, and there was no controls, there was no lights, nothing. It was just a seat and this long thing and him.
And how big did you say this? You might have said, and I might have missed it. How big did you say this craft was?
I think if you had two cars end on end, it was about that tall. So about 30 foot, maybe 25 foot, 30 foot, something like that.
And it's just hanging there, suspended 100 feet away from you.
It is, and it's quite an amazing thing to see. And the guy who was sat in on the floor, if you like, his head was to the right as I look at him, and he was looking off towards the school playing fields. My house and then 3 houses, and then it's a school. So if you imagine, he was in front of me, probably by the 3rd house. So he was looking over at the school.
This is pure speculation, obviously, on both of our parts, but particularly you. Did you get a sense at the time, A, did this thing, this person, this entity that was flying this tic tac, obviously responded to you when you verbalized, like, wow, right?
Mm.
Did you get the sense that he was reacting to you and that's why he looked over? And did you get a sense of maybe what this thing was doing?
Yes. So what happened is when he was looking away, I said, "Wow, I can't believe I'm seeing this." And then his head moved towards me and looked at me. And in that kind of nanosecond, I could actually hear his thoughts. And it's very, very brief. But what I heard in my head was, "I know I shouldn't be doing this. I love the sun." Um, and then it was blank. So I don't know if he knew that I could hear his thoughts, but I could. And it was only for about a second that I got them.
So you had some sort of telepathic connection with this entity that was in the ship.
That's right. That's just the start. Yes, I did.
Well,
Um,
I'm sure the audience has tons of questions like I do, but I think maybe some backstory might. Is this the first time you've had experiences with extraterrestrial? I'm assuming what you think is extraterrestrial craft, and
no, when I was 13, I had an experience. Would you like me to tell you what happened?
yeah, I
So
think I'll hold my questions, and I think once you get into that story, maybe it'll answer some of those questions, and I'll take some notes, and then we'll meet back up after that.
sure. So I was 13 and I was asleep, and I got woken up by a buzzing sound and a vibration. And the buzz and the vibration, I could hear it with my ears and I could feel it with my body, but I could also hear it in my head. It was a very strange feeling, but it was enough to wake me up. And of course, I'm awake and I'm thinking, where is that coming from? What is that? So I go to my bedroom window and I look out, and in front of me, probably about a quarter of a mile, half a mile, I can see a black object going across from right to left as I look, going, and as I'm looking at this black object, I go, wow, you know, look at that. And literally, as I said, wow, look at that, the object stopped and then came straight towards my window. And as it's getting closer and closer, so as it's coming towards me, the first thought I had was, okay, UFOs are real. This is a UFO. And it was gloss black, really, really liquid black, an amazing kind of glossy black, it's just an amazing thing. And it was Christmas pudding shaped. So it was round, but flat on the bottom. So round and flat. And as it got closer and closer and closer, I could see that under the craft, because it's getting really close to my window, it was molten lava. It was hot embers. If you looked at lava and you saw the orangey yellow and then some black bits in that kind of molten liquid, then as you looked up at the craft, that's what you saw underneath. So it's the shiny, shiny black, and then this molten bottom.
So clearly, at that time and that experience as well, this thing almost responded because you say something out loud and you think this, and then all of a sudden this craft comes closer. Did you feel a connection at that point, like you did in the Tic Tac incident that happened like 6 years ago? Did you feel at the point that that was happening that you had this connection with whatever was in this craft?
Well, not at first. As it got closer and closer, and I said to myself, wow, UFOs are real. And as it got closer and closer, and it was literally outside of my window, I remember thinking, I wonder how they drive that. How do they operate that? How do they control it? And as I literally said those words, a nanosecond later, my view opened up from the outside into the inside, and I could see inside of the craft. And it was just an amazing thing. So on the right-hand side of the craft, there were 3 people dressed in suits, thin, shortish. They actually look like the Power Rangers. If you this is 1985, and in 1985 the Power Rangers didn't come out until late 89, 90. But if it was in 1990, I would have said to you, you're never going to believe this. I just saw the Power Rangers. So they looked just like the Power Rangers. They were sort of young, athletic, tight suits, looking forwards. As I was looking to them to the right, they were looking forwards. And as I'm looking inside the craft, I'm just totally focused on these three individuals, and I'm totally in awe. And as I'm looking at them, one of them said, "I thought you wanted to see the controls." I went, "Oh yeah, you're right." And as I went to look from them across the craft to the left-hand side, you could actually see straight through. So although it was black, looking through, it was all translucent. I could see the houses outside. It was as if you were looking straight through. And as I looked to the left, there was this rectangular console, for lack of a better word. Not really much there, just a flat surface with different lights, and I didn't really make out what it was. I was so in awe of looking at the people. And as I got from them to there, then my view closed down. I was on the outside again, and I could see the craft, and I was back in my window. And then the craft just silently started to go back to the original route it came from.
As far as the entities, the things that were inside these three people, for lack of a better term, let's go with that for the time being. What did they look like? Were they human like? Was it some?
Well, they had
listening, thinking we're talking like grays or something like that. But just describe for me and the audience what they look like.
So they had helmets on and they had suits on. The suits were very tight fitting, and again, they were a lot whiter than the guy I saw at the Tic Tac, much whiter. The helmet was white. Yeah, and they looked. If I had to guess, I would have said they were like 14 or 15 years old. So perhaps they were 5 foot tall. They were not. They weren't as big as an adult, like a human adult. They're sort of 3/4 of our size. Hence why I would say they're like 14 or 15. And if you think of the Power Rangers, they're not adults, are they? The Power Rangers, they're kind of adolescents, and that's how I remember it. Yeah, they didn't move. They stayed completely still, and they were looking forwards the way the craft was going. But yeah, and they talked to me mentally.
That was my next question. When you got to see inside the craft and you got to see it and have this interaction with them, do you feel that you were physically there, or was this something that they were projecting or that was happening in your mind? In other
Well,
words, was it like an abduction, like a mini abduction where you were taken on board the craft, or was it something that they were able to do mentally where you were able to see and answer your question?
I believe it was all mental. It was as if they flicked a switch in my head, and I could know, instead of just looking at the outside, I was looking at the inside. But I could, if you imagine, I was at my windowsill and I was looking. I couldn't see anything else other than the craft. The craft was everywhere in my view. I couldn't see the walls or the carpet or the glass of my room. I could just see the inside. So it was as if my head was actually in the craft. It was very odd. But as far as I know, I was still in my room. And I hope that's true.
And then when you said the craft just basically floated off, and that was the end of that encounter.
Well, I actually thought as it started moving away, I wonder where they're going next. And I got back instantly again, we're going to explore. So, yeah, being so young, I was only 13 at the time, and, never having any other experience and not knowing what the Power Rangers were or anything, it was just so odd. It was hard to, was it a dream? Was it real? But it was so vivid and so, everything that happened and all my thoughts afterwards was so real. And I also had a bit of legacy from that. So as I got older through my teens, I had a lot of perception, a lot of sixth sense, which I put down to that experience. So, for example, with friends, we were doing heads or tails with coins, and we were work because we play rugby, and if you toss the coin and whoever starts, has it, you can choose which end on that sort of thing. So we were practicing tossing the coin, and I think I got to 32 tosses, got it correct, 32. And I only got bored, and people were looking at me as if I was a complete nutcase that I didn't get the 33rd, but I would have got 33rd. And it was so to know what I don't know what the odds are of doing that, but it's massively difficult to predict 32 spins, which I did. So that's just one example of that kind of perception that happened to me afterwards.
Well, I didn't do a very good job of sort of closing out that experience about 6 years ago when you were having the interaction with this entity on board, this Tic Tac. How did that end up playing out, and then how did that end up coming to its conclusion as far as that encounter?
So yeah, with that sixth sense, now you fast forward, I'm now I was 13 and this happened at 44 years of age, so it's a long time. But I'm looking at the guy in the Tic Tac. I'm looking at these weird vibrating rods, for lack of a better word. He's turned his head. He's now looking towards me. I've got some kind of message from his, I shouldn't be doing this. I love the sun. And then at that moment, he starts to try and erase my memory. I could feel like a blackness come into my head, and it was as if he was trying to erase my memory. And at the time, I took a massive exception to it. And there was no way I was going to let him erase my mind, because it was just so incredible what I saw that there was no way I was going to forget it. So I started to kind of fight back. So as this blackness was coming into my head, and when I recount this story, I can still really feel it. As the blackness is coming, I start pushing back, and I start replaying all my other experience, where I saw the craft going across, that it came towards me. I saw the blackness and the lava and the people and the views and everything that had happened to me. I started to replay, to say to the entity, look, you're not the first person I've met. This has happened to me before. And the blackness is coming, and I'm replaying everything that's happened. And I'm saying to the person, look, I don't want my memory erased. Why don't, and this is absolutely true, why don't you park your vehicle in my garden and come in and talk to me? What the biggest regret I have of the last experience is that it was over very fast. I didn't really talk to them. And I really want to get to know you. So please don't erase my memory. Come into the house and let's chat. So then he comes back and says, don't worry, I'm just doing research. Go indoors. So I said, okay, I'll go indoors. That's, I sort of counted that, but you're not gonna erase my memory. So I walk back into my house, and I'm being pushed in, really. Mentally, I'm being pushed into the house, but I'm fighting him off. And I get into my front room, and I lose memory of what happens from that moment onwards. I can't actually remember coming into the house, and I can't actually remember what I did when I got in the house. My next memory is a really big roar, and you can hear straight over the top of the house, like a massive roar. And that woke me up from this kind of daze, and I'm in the house thinking, God, what just happened? So I rush back outside, look up to where the sky, where this thing was. It's gone, but as you look into the distance, there's a fighter jet banked, so doing a big circle, in the distance, as it would be circling my house almost. But a fighter jet, really, really loud, straight over the top of the house. Yeah, and so I'm in amazement. What's just happened to me? This fighter jet, and that's how it ended.
I've talked to so many people that have had sort of close up encounters with what they believe to be alien craft and alien entities, right? And one of the questions that I've asked often, particularly the several people I've interviewed that have had what they consider to be abduction, sometimes multiple abduction encounters. And the question always arises from the people in the audience, and of course, me as the host listening to your story. particularly with the one when you were 13, the question always comes up, well, it was sleep paralysis. It
Mm.
was a dream, right? So what do you say to those people, or even to yourself, I guess that is the first question. Looking back in retrospect, having these two experiences, are you convinced that it was what it seemed to be at you seemed to be at the time, or do you think it's a possibility that it was a dream or some sort of sleep paralysis that you experienced?
I think when it first happens, it's directly afterwards, you kind of think to yourself, that must have been a dream. Um, it was so unusual and so odd. But then you can't get out of your head. It's not a dream or an experience that you can forget. You literally cannot forget it. So you start thinking to yourself, I wonder if anybody else has seen this craft. And at the time in England, there was a magazine called the 14 Times. And the 14 Times was everything weird and wonderful. And on a Saturday, I would go into town and I'd go to like a newsagent. I would never buy it, I didn't have the money, but I would get the magazine and I'd look through it. And one day I looked through it and someone did a pencil sketch of a um, Christmas pudding shaped craft and flames at the bottom and said, I have seen this. Has anybody else seen it? And for me, that was a massive, wow, somebody else has seen it. But also in conjunction, I did feel like I had some kind of perception, which I never had before. And I could really use this skill to help me in life. So um, having that ability and of seeing the news article of somebody else who saw the ship reinforces it that I did see what I saw. And I can't forget it.
And that's a fair answer. I think that's the best you can do, right? Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of times I hear people talk about screen memories and the erasing of the memories and things like that that people experience. So you being able to recall that, let's go back to the Tic Tac for a second.
Oh, there's one more thing, by the way. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's one more, which is that recently I was watching a series, and on the series was a guy that saw the Phoenix Lights, and he saw what he said was the craft going directly over his head in the Phoenix Lights. And as he looked up underneath the craft, he saw a big round opening full of what he called lava. So he saw lava on that ship. So I've not heard anybody else apart from that news article of somebody saying they saw lava on a craft, but he did. So again, that's another reinforcement.
Yeah, I've never really heard that either. So I have to look that. I've been trying to get some folks on the show that Dr. Kitai, for example, who was at, you know, a leading expert when it goes into the Phoenix Lights and do a show about that because I'm fascinated by that, one of those multiple sighting kind of situations. And that's the other question I had for you as far as the Tic Tac is concerned. You said this happened at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon and this thing was like
Mm,
30, 40 feet.
yeah.
Did anybody else, did you ever get an opportunity to see if maybe anybody around you saw the same thing that you saw that day?
No, I mean, I'm very reluctant to sort of go to the press and say, I've seen an alien craft outside my house because you'd get ridiculed. But locally, we have, parties, street parties, that kind of thing. We network, and I would drop hints like, "Have you ever seen anything strange?" But nobody has. I mean, I don't know if I was the only person who could see it. I mean, I actually saw it with no front. I mean, I was looking directly into it, so that was really odd. I mean, there was no kind of canopy open or, higher or lower. It was just an open capsule, for lack of a better word. So I don't know whether my ability, if that's the right thing to use. I could see it, and nobody else could. I don't know, but I haven't gone. I haven't gone to the press to say who else has seen it because I don't want to be known as the alien guy. It's bad enough having one story, and then I've got another story, and I've got other stories. So I'm trying to keep it quiet. And I probably wouldn't have come forward. And remember, so I've seen this craft, and um, um, 4 years later, there's a video of a craft, by pilots, and I'm thinking to myself, that's the same ship. I've seen that ship. And this, and of course, David Faver says it's a big white tic tac. And up until that point, I'd never heard of anyone call a UFO white. They've always been silver or black or, lit up with blue or, bright lights. No one, as far as I know, has ever said, I've seen a white UFO. But back 6 years ago, I was seeing a white UFO. So for me, that was a massive reinforcement of I did see what I did see. So yeah, so then I came forward.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you've mentioned the perception and other experiences. So after these couple of experiences that you've had, one at 13 and then one like 6 years ago, what other experiences have you had, and what has this perception, what kind of part has that played in your life since you've had these experiences?
Well, the perception's been brilliant. It really is a skill that I've really relied on. In fact, it in my late 30s, early 40s, it started actually taking over my life, and I actually rebelled against it because it got stronger and stronger and stronger. And I almost felt like I couldn't make my own decisions. It was as if this perception was making decisions for me. Admittedly, the decisions were all right, but they were not my decisions. It's very hard to explain, and I rebelled against it. And now it's 10 years later. Now it's a lot less, but it's still there. But it's nowhere near as powerful as it was. I've managed to kind of push it back. It's very hard for me to explain it, but I've still got it, but it's nowhere near as strong as it was. But moving on to what happened next. So this is a massive, seeing this craft, seeing this person, being pushed in, it was a crazy experience. So 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, 3 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by, and normality is back. I can put it into a little box in my mind. I try not to think about it. And it's a work day. It's 7 a.m. My alarm's going off. I'm in bed. And I just reach over to hit the alarm button to switch it off. But as I reach over, I forget there's a big pint glass of water next to the alarm clock. So I accidentally hit the glass, knock over the water. The alarm's going off, got water over the floor. I'm in bed. I'm thinking, oh no, what have I done? So I push the alarm off. Just below the alarm, it's on a bedside cabinet. And at the bottom of the bedside cabinet, there's a whole load of plugs where I've got electrical sockets for different things. And it's gone over the electrical sockets. And I'm thinking, oh no. So I get out of bed. I run into my hallway where I've got a towel cupboard, get a load of towels, turn around, walk back into my bedroom, ready to mop up all the water on the floor. And in front of me, there's the guy from the craft in my bedroom at 7 a.m. in the morning. And it was shocking. It was an amazing, weird, just almost traumatic experience. It was just crazy. But he was there.
And what did you say? And what happened next when this thing is, or this guy is standing in your bedroom?
Well, I mean, it was. I was so shocked, and I do really mean shocked. I mean, really, really, really shocked. I couldn't talk. I was like paralyzed almost. Seeing this person, and the first thing that hit me was he wasn't wearing a helmet, because every other person I'd seen had been wearing a helmet. So no helmet. I could see his face. We're quite close. If you imagine, the width of a bed, plus perhaps 4 or 5 feet. We're that close, really close. So I'm seeing him really close up, whereas before it's always been a bit of a distance. And he's got an apparatus, and it's very hard to describe. But basically, if you imagine a hoop made of cloud, he's got a hoop around his top part of his body. He's got a hoop around his midriff, and he's got a hoop around his knees. So you're looking at this person with these hoops of cloud, and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him thinking, oh my God, this is crazy. And he's my height, and he's a greeny gray color. He's got like a bit of a muzzle so his cheeks, if you like, come forward, and a bit like not as protruding as a dog, but definitely a muzzle. And I'm just totally gobsmacked. It's an amazing feeling.
So this person or this thing is standing in your bedroom with you. Did you start to have a conversation? What did you say something? Was it sort of a telepathic communication, or did you guys have a conversation? What happened next?
Well, it was really strange. I mean, this only lasted 10 seconds, if it was 10 seconds. So I'm looking at him and, my brain is racing. It's probably gone into frozen mode. He's looking at me as if to say he can see me. He was quite surprised I could see him, but I could see him plain as day. He was, when I first walked in, he was actually looking down at the water and that's when I first walked in. And then he looked up towards myself, and then I'm totally looking at him. And then he just turns and walks through the cabinet and then through the wall on the second floor and walks straight through, which was an amazing experience. And the last thing I saw, he walked through the wall and this cloud followed him through as he walked through. And it was, I never went to dry the floor. I didn't go to that side of the bed for about 2 or 3 weeks. I was afraid to touch the wall where he walked through. Eventually I did. It was an amazing experience.
Was that the last experience that you've had with these things? Or have you had other experiences?
Yeah,
What
so
else
it's
has
crazy.
happened? What else has happened?
So that was mental, and I did try and tell people because it was so mad. I tried to tell my father, I tried to tell my mother, but I didn't say alien. I said I think I've seen a ghost, full apparition. But as soon as you say that, people just think you're mental. So I couldn't tell anybody, and it's really tough to have that as a secret and not tell people. And you can't forget it. I mean, none of my experiences you can forget, but you cannot forget that. Anyway. So about 4 weeks again later. So 4 weeks later, I'm in my front room. I'm watching television. It's about 10 p.m. at night. I've got a partner and a daughter. They're upstairs in bed, and I got this weird feeling again. It always starts with a feeling, and the feeling is I've got to go into the kitchen. Because everything that's happened quite recent to that, it was, well, I've got to go into the kitchen. So I go into the kitchen, and in front of me is a rotating gold disc. The disc was about 1 meter, so 3 or 4 feet high, round. It looked like a shield. So in the center of it, dinner plate size, was protruded forwards. Then there was a roll, and then on the outer lip, if you like, that was protruded forward as well. So it was sort of out, in and out. And it looked like a shield, but it wasn't a shield. But there's nothing I can say what it looked like. And it was rotating. It's flat. So it's probably about this sort of thickness, and it was rotating above my breakfast bar in my kitchen. And I'm like, what is this? Absolutely amazing, golden, shimmering, amazing thing to see. And as it rotated, it stopped for a moment, and it just went into a pinpoint and disappeared right in front of me. I mean, I was only maybe 5 foot away from it. It was crazy.
Do you have any idea why this thing was in your? I mean,
No.
it's related somehow to these other experiences that you've had, right?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, I obviously I have no idea. Um, it was such a strange experience, and it was so vivid, and it was so unusual. And I got this feeling it was Egyptian when I was looking at it, thinking, what is that? And it disappeared, and I saw it disappear. Um, about a week afterwards, I just couldn't think of anything else, to be honest. It was completely in my mind. And I pictured the person that I'd seen in the Tic Tac. I pictured his face from the person in the bedroom, and I reran everything, and I sort of threw my thoughts into the ether and said, "You've got to tell me what I just saw, because it's driving me crazy." I mean, it was taking up all of my thoughts. And the message and thought I got back was, that was my ship. That's what I heard. That's my ship. But how can it be your ship? It's about 1 meter. uh, is gold. But that's what I had back, and I've had nothing ever since. It was just that's my ship. So it's very very odd.
Any other experiences after this thing shows up in your kitchen?
Yeah. So about 4 weeks again later, I'm in the, it's exactly the same time of day. So about 10 p.m. I'm in the front room, and a massive, and I mean absolutely huge amount of static electricity fills the room, and it's absolutely huge amount. So your body's prickling. You know something's happening. At that time, I was thinking they're in the kitchen again. There's something going on in the kitchen, and as I'm sort of thinking, shall I get up and go around into look into the kitchen? I noticed that in my front room that I've got a television, a fireplace, and on the left hand side it's paint and plaster. On the right hand side it's paint and plaster, either side of the TV and fireplace. But the right hand side was fuzzy. It was it was not sharp. And as I'm looking, I feel this massive static electricity, and I'm looking on the right hand side, and I'm thinking to myself, that isn't right. That's not sharp. That's that's an image. That's a picture. If you imagine the right hand side was on television, it should have been a wall, but it looked like it was a TV showing me the wall. It wasn't the wall, and it was like this is crazy. And of course, the first thing I thought was it's the guy from my bedroom with this weird cloud apparatus activated, and he's behind the wall, and he's kind of watching me, or whatever he's doing. He thinks this camouflage thing is working, but it's not, because I can see that he's definitely there, kind of thing. So in my mind, I'm saying, look, I really want to talk to you. You've been around my house. I want to talk to you. But nothing back, completely dead. So I get up and I walk towards this fuzzy pictured wall. I put my hands on it, which is like full of electricity. Actually feel it fizzing and like pop on your hands. And that was it. I just cannot remember anything else. I want to think I turned around and went back up to bed. But I mean, how would you have, how would you have had everything that happened and then just turned around, walked upstairs, went to sleep? That's the sort of weird memory I have, but it's not a real memory. I don't think. I just woke up remembering everything that happened, apart from really how I got to bed, apart from this weird sort of where you must have went back and went upstairs. So I don't know what happened, and that's a really really odd. But yeah, that was crazy.
What else have you had happen since then? Have you had other experiences?
Yeah, so I walked into the kitchen one evening, and in front of me, where the golden disc was just above the breakfast bar, but to the right, there was an entity, a man, and this is absolutely true. He looked like Jesus. If you had to imagine someone, um, really attractive person, but with a beard, like you would see with Jesus, with a hair, it looked just like him, and I mean really, really looked like him. And he had his arms around a lady who had her back to me, and her head was, say, up to here on him. So I reckon he was about 6'2", something like that. Gorgeous looking person. And I'm walking into my kitchen and went, you know, totally wow. And it was as if he was on an elevator and went straight up through the ceiling of the kitchen, and above the kitchen I've got a spare bedroom, and he went straight up into the spare bedroom. Now at that moment I should have thought, I've got to go upstairs and see who that was. That's crazy. But because of what's happened to me after that, I've come to realize that they basically can manipulate your mind. And I didn't think, let's go up the stairs and find out where they've gone. It was almost as if there's no way I'm going up there. This is crazy. I'm going to leave them alone and I'm going to carry on with my day. But that that message into my mind was not mine, but they put it in there to stop me going up, if that makes sense.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've talked to people that have had so many interesting and wild experiences. Not necessarily as wild as some of the ones you're describing, but that phenomenon in and of itself of I've just had this weird experience, but I'm just going to go to bed. I mean, I've
Yeah,
heard that so many times,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
sort of a common thing, particularly in situations where you're having extraterrestrial craft and even close encounters of the fourth kind with these entities. It seems to be a common theme, and it's almost like a I don't know if it's part of the screen memory or it's part of the way they sort of shut down the experience for you, but it's almost like this cathartic sort of feeling of euphoria that that Jesus was in the middle of my kitchen
yeah.
and
That's right.
I'm going to go on about my day kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
That phenomenon in and of itself is just really interesting to me when I talk to people who have had experiences like yours. You
Well,
said you go ahead.
sorry. The reason I know it's a planted memory or a planted thought was because of what happened to me afterwards. So if you want me to tell you about that, then I'm happy to see. So I'm in the garden again, and I've got this overwhelming feeling that that craft's back. It's exactly the same. So I'm thinking, does lightning strike twice? I'm looking up, and there is nothing there. Um, it's blue sky to the right, and there's clouds to the left. And I'm scanning everywhere. There is nothing there. But I've got this overwhelming feeling that there is something there. I ignore it and I go about what I'm doing. And this overwhelming feeling almost doubles up. So now I'm really, really sure. So I stopped and I'm looking exactly where I looked last time. There's nothing there. I'm thinking to myself, am I going crazy? What is happening? I've got deja vu. What's going on? Um, and I got a phone in my pocket. The last experience, I didn't have a phone, but this time I got a phone in my pocket and I know it's in there. But I want to take a photograph, but there's nothing there. So I'm thinking, I am going crazy. There's something really odd. So I ignore it and I potter on and I do something else, even though I'm sure there's something there. And then the third one, it's this is for you. That's what I hear in my mind. And I've stopped again, and I honestly I am thinking I'm going crazy. And I look up, nothing there in the blue sky, but on the left in the big area of cloud, cut out of the cloud is a saucer shape, UFO shape, and you can see the blue sky through. So it's almost as if someone lasered out the cloud a picture, like a cookie cutter of a UFO shape, and it's there in the clouds. And I think camera. So I've got my hands in my pocket. I've got the camera, and I'm switching it on, and I'm putting it to camera on my phone, and I want to take a photograph. But what I've got is a feeling or a message or thoughts. Don't take a photograph. No one's going to believe you anyway. Well, I do want to take a photograph because I haven't got any kind of, you know, evidence for myself. So I want to take a photograph. Don't take a photograph. This is just for you. So I knew instantly that they were trying to put me off. They were trying to tell me not to do it. But then they said, because I was really determined to do it. And then they said, this is for you. So now I'm confused because I've realized at that point of everything that's happened that they can actually do this now. That's my confirmation. So I know they can do it. And I really want to take the photograph. But what they basically do is wait long enough for the clouds to shift and move so that the clear cookie cutter shape is now moved and the clouds have moved. And by the time I get my control of myself to take the photograph, it's gone. But I knew at that moment that they definitely implant some kind of memory, or not memory, but choice that is not your choice. So yeah, that's how I knew. But it was a cookie cutter shape of a UFO. It's amazing.
So you've had all these experiences, and the question always comes to mind when I'm talking to an experiencer like yourself. And the question is always this: I've seen a UFO. I've had one experience where I've seen one, and a couple of other experiences that were definitely iffy, right? the one that I know was some sort of unidentified flying object, and I'm 47, and that happened when I was 16.
Right.
So the question always comes up and is always foremost in my mind, and I've asked this many times from other people or to other people. Why do you think it is that you are the one chosen, for lack of a better term, to have these experiences with these things?
Well, I mean, I ask myself that question every day almost. And the answer is I don't know. I think it's just being in the wrong place at the wrong time or the right place at the right time. In my looking back on what happened to me, in the end, I did invite him in, and not expecting for one moment, I suppose, that he would or anybody else would actually come. Um, you know, you would never expect, although when I had this sort of mental battle saying, please come into the house, I want to meet you and I want to talk to you and work out, you know, learn more about you. Not for a second did I ever think he would. So when I invited them in, that's when things really kicked off. So the only thing I can say to myself is that you did invite them in and they did come. So, you know, how long they were there, what they did, everything that I've missed, that I didn't see, how long, who were they, where do they come from? I mean, I have no idea. But that genuinely happened. It's all 100% true.
Well, that takes me to maybe the final question of, and this is something I battled with so many years and continue to battle with to this day, is what do you think these things are, and where do you think they're coming from, and are they already here? That's always the question that I go to. Is, I used to think for many years that they were traveling, millions of light years from different galaxies far, far away. But the more I've looked at the subject and the more that I've studied this, I think it's possible that it's more of an interdimensional type thing. I mean, what do you think? You've had these experiences with these entities and these craft. Where do you think they're coming from, and where do you think they are?
I mean, the truth is, I don't know. But one experience happened to me which was very strange. So, what I wanted to do is know who they were, and I kind of asked, "Who are you?" And I went to sleep. And during the night, I got woken up, and I'm in bed, and I'm looking up, and basically the whole ceiling of my room is gone. There's no ceiling, and I could see stars above me, and it was almost as if they were trying to show me where they're from. And the only thing, there was no kind of Big Dipper or any kind of celestial stars that you might recognize in our sky. But to my left, as I was looking, there's a big, a bit like an and sign. When you do an and, it's a big loop, almost like a roller coaster would go up and go over. And it was to my left. There's a whole load of stars in a big kind of roller coaster looking picture, and almost as if to say we're from the roller coaster or and sign. So that was very odd. I was about 30 minutes. So I was looking at the sky, and it was almost as if that was projected to say this is where we're from. But I mean, I don't know. I could have been dreaming it. It could have been. It's such an odd experience. And an experience I had was that I actually said to them, "You've been to my house. I'd quite like to see your house." uh, um, and I had a view or an impression or again some kind of mental view, and they showed me what looked like a circus top, but it was grey blue. It was a building, but it looked like a circus top. And I've never done remote viewing or anything like that, but if I had to imagine what it was, it felt like I was being remote viewed. So I was walking towards this big blue grey top, and as we got to the front of it, there was no door or entrance. You just walk straight in. It was very odd, through the walls, but they disappeared as you got there. And inside of it was just cavernous, darkish, with people scurrying around. It was very, very odd. but it wasn't a dream because, you know, I don't dream very often anyway. But again, I remember it so vividly. You know, I can actually, being cold and this kind of thing, very, very odd. And then another one was that I said, "Where did you go?" So the Tic Tac was there, and then I went inside, and then the fighter jet turns up, it's gone, and afterwards I was thinking, where did it go? And they, again, it's a bit like remote viewing, I guess. I mean, I don't know what it is, but it was almost I was following it, and it went to the North Pole, and it went straight up, um, and then I don't know, rendezvoused with some other ship or something. But yeah, it went to the North Pole and straight up. That was very odd as well. You know, I don't know if I'm dreaming all this or if it's some weird kind of mental projection of my, you know, I want to know and I'm sort of filling in the blanks, or whether they're actually showing me. I don't know. But that's what happened to me.
It's very interesting stuff, man. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences. I've had a blast talking to you.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I do appreciate. It's very hard to believe. Uh, you know, all I can do to reassure you is that um, I am absolutely telling the truth. And remember, they have released a video, the Pentagon, and it is of the same ship, and they have said we don't know what it is. So that is real. Another thing, by the way, is that about a year or 2 years ago, quite often I get overflown by military jets or helicopters. The noisiest, I've had two Chinooks go over my house, which has been crazy. But actually, one day, there was a helicopter in almost the exact same position where the white Tic Tac was. So there was a military helicopter hovering in almost identical position. Of course, it's making a massive row. I'm inside the house. I come outside the house. I could see the helicopter in almost exactly, just a bit to the left. They missed it by a little bit. And they would, don't know what they were doing, but, you know, I can't, if I was imagining it all and if I was making it all up, then why would a helicopter be in exactly the same position as where this white thing was? And how would they know where it was? Well, but there was this fighter jet going a big circle when it happened. Who would have seen where it was? And yeah, so these little things do add up. You know, so I'm not going crazy, is what I'm trying to say.
And I say often, you know, I do a Bigfoot show, I do the paranormal show, and at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what other people believe or what they think, because I don't have anybody on the show that I don't believe has had what they believe to be real encounters with whatever it is that they're talking about. So I don't sit in judgment, and the majority of my audience, there'll be a couple that will always do that, but the majority of the audience sees things, I think, for what they are, and it is your experiences. And like I said, you could choose not to share those experiences, or you can choose to share them. And I'm glad that people like you are willing to come out and share those experiences, because I learn from them, and everybody who listens to this show learns from them. And you take whatever pieces of the story that you may not believe, or whatever the case may be, and it is what it is. But at the end of the day, it is your experience, and I do appreciate you coming on and sharing them.
Great, thank you very much. It's nice to hear somebody say that, because a lot of people just literally just think I'm crazy. But it 100% happened, 100%.
Yeah, there's no judgment here, man. I that's that's not what this show's about. That's not what my audience is about. So it's great. I know you sent an email to Danny with the drawings that I'm assuming you did. Are you
No, a
okay?
friend of mine, yeah,
Are you okay with
he's
me
a better
sharing?
drawer than me. Yeah, someone who's a, you know, a semi-artist.
Yeah.
And I was working with her obviously to help her get all these pictures. A lot of people say, why do you have pictures? Why don't you have video? Why don't you have cameras? But I think it boils down, when I was 13 and stuff, we'd never have had one anyway. That was 1985. But when I was in the garden and I actually saw the Tic Tac, I was gardening. You know, I could hear my phone ringing in the house. There's no way I would have had it doing gardening. But also, um, I think they do manipulate your mind. So when you talk to them, they're in your head and you can hear what they're saying, but they also know what you're thinking. So if you thought, I'll take my camera out and take a picture of you, they would know that because they're in your head when they talk to you. And they would just put some weird command into your mind saying, don't do that. Like when they went up in the kitchen, um, go about your day. And you think that's you saying that. So you just think, oh, yeah, I won't take a photograph because no one will believe me anyway. And they implant that into your mind. So I think one of the main reasons people don't get photographs of close up, this is when people, not something miles away or in the sky or anything, but when you're close up and you're communicating with them, the reason you don't get photographs is because they're programming you not to. And I think that's not very well known. It doesn't seem to be shared, as far as I know, in the major press or in these TV series. No one seems to be talking about that. But it absolutely 100% happens.
Yeah, I believe it does, man. And I've talked to enough people that have had encounters with aliens and UFOs that are close up. And very rarely does anybody ever get a photo, like you said, of a close up encounter. There's been so many different ones. Rendlesham comes to mind, and other incidents where people see these craft, and there's no, well, there may be pictures of them, we just don't know it. But particularly nowadays, when everybody's got a phone in their pocket, same thing with
Mm.
Bigfoot encounters, other cryptid encounters. Very rarely does anybody take a picture. And some people say, they think it may be the same thing with Bigfoot that happens with the aliens, is that they almost know, and they have this telepathic communication that sort of blocks you from doing that. But sometimes I think it's just simply, it boils down in some cases to the stress of the situation. You don't think about, I mean, people have had encounters with things, and they've literally got their phone in their hand, and they have no photos, no videos, no nothing, because it's the last thing on their mind is, hey, I got to get a picture of this, right? Because at the end of the day, they know what they experienced. They don't need to have that evidence, so to speak, for other people, because they don't really give a shit what other people think.
That's right.
It's their experience, and I didn't need to take a picture. I had my experience. I would love to have been able to take a photo of this huge craft that I saw when I was 16 from fairly close by, but I don't need that. It's still here. I still remember it. I still have that experience, and I shared it with my mom, so we saw it together, and we have that experience that we sometimes talk about. But yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people think. And like I said, the audience that listen to both of my shows, I mean, you have those yahoos every once in a while that, yeah, dude's full of shit. How could you believe that story? But the majority of people, they tune in because they do believe, and they want to hear the experiences, because it is important. Because I guarantee you, there are other people that are going to hear this that had very similar, or have had very similar experiences that you have. I get it all the time, particularly when I do like the alien abduction stuff and things like that. People reach out and say, "Oh my God, I thought I was the only one who had ever had an experience like that." There's tons of people out there. Just a lot of people don't want to talk about it. So I'm glad that you came on and did it. So you're okay with me? What I'll do when I get this ready to go out, maybe next week, it may be this Sunday. I don't know when I'll put it out. But I'd like to do a post on Instagram, maybe, with all the photos that are the pictures
Yeah,
that you
sure.
sent me to go along with it, because people like to have that visual. Not everybody gets the videos, so it's an audio medium with the podcast. So being able to go over and share those on Instagram, I think people would really enjoy seeing them.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, my story does dovetail with what other people have seen. So, David Faver, Louis Elizondo, and quite a few other Nick Pope commentators. Because remember, this is a well-known topic. The Tic Tac is almost everywhere. So my story, which came out before I even knew the Tic Tac existed, it was just a white craft to me at the time. Um, it's hard for me to get into that world because unless I'm a military veteran, they don't really want to talk to you. But they've all asked me questions. Who's the famous producer who's doing loads of UFO stuff at the moment? He did Skinwalker Ranch. Um,
Oh, I know
uh,
who you're talking about. I just can't think of his name.
he's got a beard, grey. He seems to be everywhere. He was on, some big shows. So he's been messaging me about my experiences. Um, so yeah, so they've all asked questions. So, but trying to get my story to the wider audience has been challenging because I guess it's just so unbelievable. Um, but but it's true. So yeah, so anything you can do to help me get it across to more people, that's a good thing.
Well, my show, this show and the Bigfoot show, tens of thousands of people listen every week. So tens of thousands of people are going to hear this the first week, and then I pick up new listeners. It'll be in my archives from now on. So
Yeah,
more
sure.
people will come on and listen to the show, and the story will get out there for sure. Yeah,
Great, great,
definitely.
great. Yeah. I mean, just one last thing, which is, of course, that a lot of people say the Tic Tac is a drone. It's a piece of new US defense, um, military hardware. It's a prototype and all this kind of stuff. And that's another reason I came forward, because, of course, I'm sure it's not. I'm sure it's alien. Um, and just recently, there's been another validation, by the way, which is that there's been a witness come forward who was in the ship. Was it? So the aircraft carrier where the planes went off to find the Tic Tac and then they found it. So in that aircraft, there's a control center, and in the control center, they've got video images, real time. And somebody has said that when they were in there, they saw the Tic Tac in good, really good focus, and below the Tic Tac were these like poles. So you got the Tic Tac, and the poles were like this. And if you look online at some images of the Tic Tac, there is now these straight lines underneath, a bit like antenna. But I've not heard anybody talk about that apart from that one guy. And in my story, which has been out for some time, the Tic Tac and those oscillating things, I think, are the same thing. So when the Tic Tac must have closed up, those weird poles, whatever you want to call them, were then stuck into the Tic Tac, and that might actually be the propulsion. Because why were they moving and oscillating and changing? And then this guy has seen them and is talking about these weird poles underneath. So look at the Tic Tac, look at pictures online, and look for these things that come down like that. And that's just another part of my story that I wouldn't have no way have known because it hasn't been public knowledge. It's just a Tic Tac. But it's not just a Tic Tac. There's these weird holes. So yeah, so that's just another part of my story which I couldn't have fabricated because nobody else knows about it.
Yeah, after dinner, I'm gonna be in here looking at TikTok videos for the rest of the day. Well, awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming
No
on, like I
worries.
said, and I will. I may get this out on Sunday. I don't know. We've got a conference to go to on Saturday, but I've got to put a show out on Sunday, so I may just make this Sunday show.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, have a good
Yeah.
rest of your night, man.
Great. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.